Hi, boys and girls. By the last session, we have completed the fourth module, the module on digital modulation. Now we go into the fifth module, that is on spread spectrum communication. But we have some unfinished topic in the second module, but we will go back to that later on because this fifth or sixth modules are very easy. So for all students, this will be very beneficial if we treat in the beginning. That is one reason why I go for this now. Then again, some topics in the spread spectrum communication, they are linked with the BPSK. So teaching them together is very helpful for you. So let me start with the presentation on spread spectrum communication. So the objectives of this session is that you will learn the need for spread spectrum communication. Then you will understand the theory of spread spectrum with the help of PN sequences. And then you will learn the spread spectrum transmitter and receiver. Now the most important relation in communication system theory is relation between the capacity of the channel and the bandwidth. I don't know whether you have studied this before. So every channel has a capacity which is nothing but the maximum mutual information between the input and output. So that is closely related with the entropy because we know that the mutual information between two random variables I, X, Y, that is equal to Hx minus Hx given Y. So that mutual information between the two variables X and Y, and we have to maximize that mutual information. So maximum value of the mutual information is called the channel capacity. And in Gaussian channels, I know you know most communication systems or communication channels are Gaussian in nature due to the central limit theorem. And that relation between the channel capacity and bandwidth is a unique one, that is C equal to B log 1 plus S by N, where C is the channel capacity, B is the bandwidth, and S by N is the signal to noise ratio. Often we take this logarithm in base of 2 and X plus C in terms of bits. Now, if you look into this equation, you can see that if the bandwidth is more, you can transmit at a low power, like S can be made very small, keeping the same channel capacity. Channel capacity for a capacity of a particular channel, that is fixed. So I have to have a trade-off between the bandwidth B and the signal noise ratio S by N. So in one system of communication, you can have a high fidelity channel, meaning that S by N, the signal noise ratio is very good. Then in that case, you can narrow that channel. You can make that channel very narrow. You can make B very small. You can achieve the same channel capacity. But there are certain cases, why? Because often people go for that because the bandwidth is usually very expensive. In mobile communication, the spectrum is very costly. So people try to accommodate a small bandwidth and very good signal to noise ratio. But there are certain high security applications like military applications, etc., where you pay for a high bandwidth channel and make the signal to noise ratio very, very poor. So such systems are the spread spectrum system. Why I call it the spread spectrum? Because the bandwidth is very large and the signal noise ratio is very poor, so that the signal goes below the noise floor. Now if you look at the third point, the communication channels that carry the sensitive data are always under the threat of interference or jamming. Whenever we have military data or military communication happening, always my enemies try to interfere with the data and snatch the data away from me. They send jamming signals at me and they take away the data. I have to make my system robust against any jamming. So that is what a spread spectrum is doing. The prime point in spread spectrum communication is the security of the data. So only the internet party can receive. So when I transmit a data, I intend it to be intend the transmission for my friend alone. But my enemies also try to listen to this. They send, while my message is going through the channel, he sends jamming signals and try to snatch my data that I cannot allow. So that data can be protected by widening the channel. So I pay for a large bandwidth and then I reduce the signal power below the noise floor. So for all listeners other than my friend, the whatever is coming appears like a noise signal. So only the intended party, my friend party to whom I intended to transmit the data, only they can only receive the signal. Only he has a key to receive the signal. Others understand it just as noise. So by widening the channel and using a low SNR system, such systems are called spread spectrum communication systems. So the idea is very simple. I make the bandwidth very large and the signal noise ratio very poor, so that only the intended party, my friend who has the key to receive this, he has a PN sequence to receive this, only he can receive it. Others, all my enemies will see the signal as a noise signal, because my signal level is far below the noise floor. Now, spread spectrum usually it is the idea is multiplication by a PN sequence. A PN sequence is nothing but a pseudo noise sequence. It is called pseudo noise because it is not completely a random signal, because they are generated by fixed equations. So, but they look like a random pattern. So. I suppose I have a bit stream BT. I multiply that bit stream by the PN sequence. Now let us, if you look into this, this is my BT bit stream coming in. I multiply by a PN sequence. This is a pseudo noise sequence of say CT. I call it a chip signal of CT. So during this may be bits like 1 minus 1 etc. So during that one period or bit period of say capital T, I may have n clock cycles of this CT, so that if this is TC and this is TB, TB by TC will be n. So during one bit period, I may have some n clock cycles for this CT. So I multiply these two, resulting in a scrambled sequence, say empty. Now this empty is transmitted to the channel. Now my enemies throw interference signals at me or jamming signals at me. So at the receiver, received signal will be BT times CT plus IT. This is my interference signal. You can see that I haven't added any noise signal to this, because already this is extremely noisy. After spreading, this power is small, far below the noise floor. So AWGN does not bother me at all. What bothers me in spectrum communication is the interference signal or the jamming signal thrown at me by my enemies. So the situation is very simple. I have bit stream BT. Earlier this was going into a PSK system. Instead now, there may be a PSK system after this, but after this there may be a PSK system often. But here the BT, the bits are given here. Then I multiply by CT. CT may have n clock cycles during the one bit period. So say during a high, this may have n clock cycles of CT. So if this has a period T and this has a period TC, T by TC will be equal to capital N, number of chips in one bit duration. So this will be a scrambled signal MT. MT is passed through through a channel. So this is an additive channel anyway, through which my enemies throw interference bits or jamming bits at me, and this is my received signal. RT is BTCT plus IT. IT is the interference or the jamming signal. Now the signals may look like this. This is my BT. This is one bit duration capital T, and this is a PN sequence. So these are with 1 minus 1. This is a 1. This is a minus 1 that way. And this also has a pattern like 1 minus 1, but you can see that during the high of this one, I have say n clock cycles of my PN sequence. So when I take the product, I get a scrambled signal like this. This is my spread spectrum signal. This may eventually go into a BPSK transmitter before actual transmission. So this is how I do the spreading of the data with the PN sequence. Now what happens at the receiver is very simple again. What you do is this RT is coming. RT is, what is RT? It is BT times CT plus IT. BT times CT is my scrambled signal plus IT is the interference. Now this is my friend's receiver to whom I intended this thing. He has a copy of my CT. CT is known only for the transmitter and receiver. My receiver, my intended receiver, my friend has this CT, but my enemies do not have this CT. So what I do is I take a product between RT and CT. This is my ZT. So then this is integrated over one bit duration, and some decision is taken, like if the threshold, if it is greater than 1, it's a 1, if it's a less than 1, it's a less than 0, if it is greater than 0, it is a 1, if it is less than 0, it's a 0, that way. Zt is equal to RT into CT. So this is RT is nothing but BT CT plus IT. This is multiplied by CT. So the first term becomes BT CT times CT. CT times CT is CT square, which is 1, because I told you my CT is either plus 1 or minus 1. So if you take the square of this CT scrambling signal or the PN sequence, it is always 1. So that it is BT plus IT into CT. So this is what is received at this point is at T. Now this goes into my integrator. If you look here, if I integrate BT over one period, I get my this like a dot product. I get my based on this decision, I get my if BT, if this value is less than 0, it is a 0. If it is greater than 0, it's a 1. Then there is a bad term here, IT times CT. You know that IT is the interference signal thrown by me, by my enemies. So IT is already a very wideband noise. That's a jamming signal that is thrown at me by my enemies. Now this chip signal CT, the PN sequence, when multiplied, it becomes, IT is already a wideband signal. So when I multiply it by CT, it becomes an ultra wideband noise. Now this ultra wideband noise cannot pass through this integrator, because this integrator is ultimately a low pass filter. So it is blocked by this integrator, which helps in getting my BT back. So I get my bits back. I gets my who gets my bits back? Only my friendly receiver gets my bits back. But my enemies don't have this CT, so they do not have the faculty of getting this data received properly. Now, what you learned in this short video is that you understood the need for spectrum modulation, how I can communicate securely for military purpose, etc., how I can securely transmit information without fearing about jamming by enemies. Then you understood the basics of the direct sequence spectrum transmitter and receiver, and that is the end of this.